This is English 373, week 1, part 7. On page 2, we get another description, another little tiny phrase. It's the kind of phrase that if you're watching a movie and somebody said it, it would go right by and you'd never fucking notice it. This is why you cannot survive by just reading movies. It's also why you can't survive by just reading summaries, because this kind of thing is not going to be in a summary. You also can't survive by getting famous quotes from Macbeth, because this is not a famous quote from Macbeth. It's a detail, just like that detail I mentioned about Golgotha a minute ago. You'd have to, because the thing is, when you read a Shakespeare play, you got to look up some words in the dictionary, but even normal dictionaries won't have all the Shakespeare words because he uses old words, and dictionaries tend to have modern words in them, but not the old ones. Plus, there's some shit you got to look up on Wikipedia, like most people don't know what Golgotha is off the top of their head. Um, that's what you got me for, and also footnotes, and anyway. Cool. But there's another little throwaway line, one of these moments. It doesn't seem important, but that I think really is, because, again, I'm going to make the argument that Shakespeare is thinking about something. He's thinking about gender. He's thinking about masculinity. And you can see that at the top of page 2. There's a tiny little quote that I want to grab that nobody gives a shit about. Bellona's bridegroom. They're describing Macbeth. And they call him Bellona's bridegroom. Who the fuck is Bellona? Nobody knows who Bellona is. You have to look it up. Bellona is the ancient Roman goddess of war. She's a virgin, interestingly, which is a kind of famous thing from mythology, that it's very common for women warriors to also be virgins. It's like I don't know if it's sexism or I don't know how to describe it exactly, but it's a thing where sort of female hunters and female knights and shit tend to be associated with chastity, which is a word that has a complicated history. I just opened the whole thing, didn't I? Fuck, I don't want to talk about this. Okay, chastity. We use nowadays, if you look up in the dictionary, it means no sex, but that's not what it used to mean. Chastity used to mean no marriage. But of course, it was assumed in a very religious community that no marriage equals no sex. So there's a lot of women warriors who were chaste, which we tend to interpret nowadays to mean they didn't have any sex at all. But it's possible for a lot of them back then that what it meant was no marriage, because I think a lot of them were gay. And when I say a lot of them, I mean the goddesses and fictional characters that these characters are based out of. So, like, you would like the Wonder Woman is an Amazon, and I think the Amazons would have been chaste in the sense that they don't have marriage because they're an all-female society, but I think they're having sex with each other. So anyway, and there's Diana, who is the goddess of the hunt, and anyway, this is like I'm not really a big mythology guy. I don't know. I know some things about mythology. Anyway, let's get back to this thing. Who the fuck is Bellona? Bellona is the ancient Roman goddess of war. I grew up in the South, and so I know this word, but many of you probably don't. Do you know the word antebellum? Um, Antebellum, it's a word you learn when you live in the South. Antebellum means before the war, meaning before the Civil War. So when somebody says, the antebellum South, and they make it sound so nice, what they mean is they had a bunch of slaves. The bella in antebellum means before the war, just like antipasta means the course of food you get before the pasta, because anta means before, not anti, A-N-T-E. Anta means before. Antepenultimate means before the end. Anyway, I'm going off on a thing now. The point is Bellona is the Roman goddess of war, and she's traditionally a virgin. And here, this dude, I don't even remember who said this, and I'm not going to look it up, but the dude on page 2, the captain, says that Macbeth. They call him Bellona's. No, it's not the captain; it's the king. They call him Bellona's bridegroom. Meaning, why do they call him that? What's a bridegroom? It's someone who's going to get married. It's a groom, like in a wedding. They call him Bellona's bridegroom because the idea is that Macbeth is so fucking violent. He would make a good husband for the Roman goddess of war, who doesn't have a husband because she doesn't have sex. But if she was going to marry somebody, it'd be Macbeth, because the Roman goddess of war loves violence, and Macbeth loves violence. This is an important thing to learn right at the beginning of the fucking play, because it sets up something that we're going to be spending the rest of the play thinking about. And it's a very kind of modern day idea, but it's important. This is page. We haven't even met Macbeth yet. We're on the top of page 2. We've read like half a page. And one of the very first things we learn is Macbeth is super violent, and other people believe that Macbeth deserves sex as a reward for that violence. because they say he got his sword. He's unseen the dude from the nave to the chops, and he should definitely, he's so violent, he should get to marry the goddess of war. Um, it sets up a link right at the beginning of the play between violence and sex. This is something that Shakespeare will spend the rest of the play thinking about. And so it's important to this idea that it's an idea that violent men deserve sex with women as like a reward for service. Um, this is the opening of the play, and this is something Shakespeare's thinking about. And these links between sex and violence are obviously very much still in our own culture. Or how, right? Yeah, okay, so I don't think I need to give a bunch of examples of that. I think you live in the world. You're aware that there are links between sex and violence in this world. Anyway, I guess my point is that this is what Shakespeare is thinking about in the play. Okay, cool. Let's move on. Did you see The Kingsman? The Kingsman has a fucking... I don't like that movie. The Kingsman is a movie it does this thing that I hate, where it sort of looks like it's making fun of James Bond movies, but it's actually just doing James Bond movies. It's like Hollywood does this thing where they take a movie and then they exaggerate it. And then for some people in the audience, the exaggeration is because we're making fun of it. And then for other people in the audience, the exaggeration is because we're doing it. Kingsman is like that. Are we making fun of James Bond, or are we doing James Bond? Sin City is like that. Are we making fun of film noir, or are we doing film noir? I can't tell, and it makes me nuts. But in Kingsman, you see the same link between sex and violence. Literally, in James Bond, saves the world and often gets the girl. In Kingsman, though, there's a princess who's been kidnapped and trapped in a dungeon, and she literally says to the hero, "If you save the world, I will let you have anal sex with me." And he does save the world, and then at the end, he goes back into her jail cell to have anal sex with her, and the movie ends. I don't know, that fucking movie, man. Uncool. But the idea that, hey, if you're violent, you deserve to get sex, is it's a key component of toxic masculinity, because violent men often feel that they deserve to own or control women. Okay, cool. This is going really well so far. I'm having fun. Let's take a look at the next thing. The next thing is almost always cut out of movie versions of Macbeth. It's oh, and you should be aware also, yeah, the movie I recommended that you see cuts a lot out. There are movie versions you can watch where every single word is left in, but honestly, I think you should cut some shit out when you make a Shakespeare play. I don't think you need to keep every fucking word, mostly because I don't think you can take every word, and it's hard to turn every word into a good play or a good movie. So I don't mind cuts. I think it's fine. People go, "Oh, they ruined the original." No, the original's right here. I can read it whenever I want. Okay, but let's talk about this. This next section is often cut because it doesn't make any sense to audiences. And I think it should be cut because films don't have footnotes, and there's no way to understand those without footnotes. But I want to show you this part, the witches. So the witches begin talking about Macbeth, and they say, sorry, they're not talking about Macbeth. They're just talking to each other about whatever, about life. "A sailor's wife had chestnuts in her lap and munched and munched and munched." They're telling this, the witch is telling a story. "Give me," quoth I, "aroint thee, witch," meaning like, fuck off. "Aroint thee, witch," the rump-fed Runyon cries. Rump-fed means she's like fat. "Aroint thee, witch," the rump-fed Runyon cries. "Her husband to Aleppo's gone, master of the Tiger. But in a sieve I'll thither sail, and like a rat without a tail, I'll do, and I'll do." It's fucking creepy, although I have no idea what she's talking about. You have to kind of, it requires footnotes. There's no way to do this without some footnotes. The witch is just telling the other witches a story about something that happened to her. This woman she passed on the street was eating chestnuts, and she wouldn't share them. And the witch says that she's going to, the witch says that her husband to Aleppo's gone, master of the Tiger, but in a sieve I'll thither sail, and like a rat without a tail, I'll do. The witch says that because this woman on the street wouldn't share food with her, she's a witch, she's got powers. Her husband is the captain of a ship that is sailing, and she is going to go there, and we thought witches could control the weather, and she's going to sink that fucking ship, and she's going to kill the lady's husband because she wouldn't share food with her. Which is bonkers, and I'll talk about it in the next video.